Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm your host, Ashley Russo, president and executive producer of The Peak TV. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers who are winners in their field and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Hey everybody, welcome to Unscripted with Russo. I'm very excited to have my next guest here. His name is Joe Fitzpatrick. Lots of you know him. He is the founder and shareholder of Fitzpatrick Lentz Bubba, amazing law firm right here in the Lehigh Valley. But Joe, there is so much more to you than just law, and I think that's what we're going to uncover today.
I hope so.
Well, we've had the pleasure of getting to know each other probably over at least 10, 12 years now. Yeah. Golf is probably our common denominator. I don't play much, but I watch and see that you're out there and your wonderful wife, Lori, and we've done some fun things together. So it's fun to have you here today, so thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. Great to be here, Ashley.
Well, I want to get to know you a little bit better, find out where you grew up, and a little bit about what you were like as a kid. So let's start with that.
Well, lived in Pennsylvania my entire life. Born in Philadelphia, the first of 5 kids.
Oh, you're the oldest. I knew
I'm
that.
the
This
oldest.
is why we connect. I'm the oldest too.
Okay. And with all that brings, basically grew up between the Philly suburbs when I was very young and Emmaus, almost in Allentown. Came back after a couple of Pennsylvania moves to the area at the end of 7th grade and went to high school here at Central Catholic. So I'm just about a homeboy.
I love it. Tell me a little bit about what you were like as a kid. You know, were you into sports? Were you into school? Were you into mischief? I mean, the oldest kid were usually the responsible ones, but...
Yeah, all the above, but in my case, I think it was being the oldest in a big Irish Catholic family. Probably the mischief part was discouraged. Good student, avid reader, avid athlete, but that avid does not mean talented. I played some baseball and football through high school, but it was pretty apparent that my long-term future and paycheck was somewhere other than athletics.
You were not hanging your hat on going to the NFL.
Not even close. not even close. But I enjoyed it, and I like to think when I played, I was at least a good teammate.
I love that. That's great. And that's important. I mean, I think from sports, there are lots of life lessons to be learned, you know, leadership and teamwork and all those things. So you got that from that experience. What about school? You said you were a good student. Was there something you were drawn to? Was there a particular subject you liked?
I was a pretty good student across the board. Really liked history and literature, but was, better than average in math and science. And I think that my draw to being a fan of language and a wordsmith and history in part led me to getting a law degree after college.
Very interesting. Yeah, I like to hear that because I have a son who's trying to sort of figure things out, also at Central Catholic, and he loves history. So this year he's taking psychology and history, and he's trying to take some diversity of subjects, accounting, just to figure out what he might be interested in.
One of the things, I love hearing that, and this isn't an answer to your question, but with my own kids and with even younger lawyers and employees, with so much emphasis on IT and technology and computer science and tech jobs that don't exist now but will in 2022, it's so important that kids and adults on a continuing basis are in touch with culture and the human condition, and that's why good literature and real news, not fake news, is paid attention to, and that lessons are learned from history. And I don't care if you're a software engineer or if you're a research lab scientist, being in touch with our history and our culture is important, and the humanities are really important because of that.
No, I totally agree with you, and I think that it's something that we've lost a little bit of, but we seem to be hopefully swinging back to a little. When you think back to your education in the early years, and we'll get into college in a minute, what are some of the lessons that you learned, or what did you take from that experience that I guess has kind of carried through with you?
Listening to people and trying to get a vibe as well as a factual message is important, and I think that learning early, whether it was being in a large family or moving a couple times, albeit not far in geography, moving to a couple schools, I found out quickly you needed to listen to people to hear what they really say and find out what the deeper meaning is beyond the words. And I think that translates in a lot of professional disciplines, but certainly in life and in good conversation and in friendships.
Yeah, that's a great life lesson. What about clubs or involvement in the community? When did some of that take root for you? Was that something you participated in high school?
Yeah, I participated in a lot of things in high school. I was student body president my senior year, and they had a weird rule at our high school was that if you were an officer of the student council, you couldn't play a varsity sport. So I didn't play football, which
really? That's interesting.
That was the rule, parochial school in the 70s. But it in the long run didn't hurt me. My friends were still my friends from the team. Probably helped me with college admissions, and it opened other doors. I was involved in a lot of volunteering clubs and so forth, but the one great thing that came out of that weird rule was senior year. There was an advertisement for the school musical, and a bunch of my friends in football and wrestling, being the macho guys they were I'll just say, casting stones at band kids and the musicians, saying, "Oh, look at that." And I wanted to be the worldly guy and said, "It's really hard to do." And they said, "Well, it's so tough, why don't you do it?" And I said to a handful of them, "If I do it, you guys have to either sing or dance in the show." The long and short of it was, and maybe the most fun thing I did in high school, this is many years and about 40 pounds ago, I got to lead in the Music Man. And got
Get
to,
out of here.
Yeah, got to take
that's so cool.
Singing and dancing and memorizing 2+ hours of script. And it was an eye-opener for me. And I had a handful of 200-pound dancers in Marion the Librarian. So it was fun.
Oh my gosh, that's
fun.
fantastic. Now, do some photos exist of this?
There might be a yearbook or two, yeah.
All right. Well, we might have to dig those up for our listening audience, so anybody watching on YouTube can see a few photos. That's great, Joe. I love that. What did you learn from that experience? Because you are right. It's a totally different world, but it's hard work.
Well, I think when you're 17, 18 years old, it's too easy to get pigeonholed and to not just to hang with a clique, but to identify people who you want to be like and who you want to be with and be seen with. And it was an eye-opener. And, it gave me an appreciation for the kids with the violins in the pit and the kids that were on the lights. And it just was a totally different endeavor. It was hard, and it was good, and it was fun.
That's really cool. Now, I don't know, fast forward, if you know that you might have been the brainchild behind a tradition at Central now. Are you aware of this? So now the football team,
yeah,
I believe, puts on some sort of dance routine. They work with the dance troupe at the pep rally.
I think that was long after I
Well,
departed,
I'm just saying, I think the seeds could have been planted. A lot of alums that send their kids and grandkids on to Central Catholic. So I'm going to have to make sure they know.
Okay. I can't take credit for that one.
All right, great. All right, so tell me a little bit about what comes next. Where do you go to college, and when do you settle in on what you're going to study?
I got into several schools, and being a reader clearly helped me with the testing, standardized testing. But I went to Penn, the University of Pennsylvania, and it was an eye-opener for me coming from Allentown, being from a large middle-class family. And it was just a great experience going to what really an international university, even years ago. Being exposed to people from all over the country, I'd say all over the world, but the fact is probably hung most with American kids. And I still have friends to this day who are lifelong friends that I went to school with. Quite a few of them were Wharton Business School people and engineering people, and I was the humanities major in American Studies. And they would say that I got through college reading novels and histories, and I told them that I rewrote their elective papers because they couldn't string sentences together. So,
I love that. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. We're here with Joe Fitzpatrick, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about his journey in college, first jobs, lessons learned when we return. So stick with us. As a mother of two, I know it can be tough to find activities that everyone will enjoy. Luckily, the Lehigh Valley has so many ways to treat your family without breaking the bank. You can experience cool discoveries at the Da Vinci Science Center or all aboard the WKNS railroad train for an afternoon adventure. There's fun around every corner of the Lehigh Valley, and you can uncover it all on Discover Lehigh Valley's website. Visit discoverlehighvalley.com for more information. All right, everybody, welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. I am here with Joe Fitzpatrick. He's the founder of Fitzpatrick Lentz Bubba law firm right here in the Lehigh Valley. And he's been telling us about his growing up at Central Catholic, sports, musicals, who knew, the student body council president. So you had a pretty illustrious high school career. You went to Penn, terrible school. I can't believe, how could you have gone there? And you mastered the humanities, and then you decided to go into law. So I want to know a couple things. Mm-hmm. Did you have any jobs while you were in college? Did you have any?
Yeah, I always had jobs.
And what were they? What were you doing?
Well, summers, I going back to high school, did everything from being a lot attendant and car cleaner for a local Chevy dealer in high school. I then worked a couple summers in residential construction, basically loading block and delivering lumber to house construction sites. During school, during the holidays, worked at Hess's department store part-time just to get a few bucks. And then in college, I got a work-study job, and it was at the Wharton School doing demographic statistics analysis, and it was either find another job or take a pipe and call life quits. So I soon, through an older friend, an upperclassman, got a great job at the dining service, where I got too much free food, but also good pay and a lot of fun.
That's
so
great.
I did that through school.
So that's a really eclectic list of first jobs. Are there lessons learned from those jobs that you kind of took with you as you embarked on a more professional path?
Absolutely. And it goes back to listening. I think that the life skill of being able to talk to anybody, whether it's a security man in the first floor of an office building at night, or a U.S. senator, or another lawyer, or a client, or Ashley Russo, being in touch with the people who surround you is important, and being able to, if you will, go off script and adjust to the person you're talking to is important. I don't mean being a fake and being somebody you're not. I'm talking in terms of reacting to the person you're with and trying to understand their message.
Yeah, no, authentically finding a connection. And I think what's interesting about your background is you found that importance of having a wide skill set pretty early on. And, you mentioned how kids kind of can get pigeonholed. And I see that, with two teenagers, it's easy thing to happen. So I love that, how you took that eclectic, wide skill set and brought it into play. As you're going through college, do you join a fraternity? Are you a part of any societies there?
Yeah, I joined a fraternity and was on the interfraternity council for a while. And in retrospect, the best part of the fraternity were a handful of great individual friends I made and retained, 4 or 5 that I'm still very close to. And I could probably go on a whole discursus on the fraternity system, but that's not the question in front of me. It wasn't a bad experience. Just I think with the.
But you're not rah-rah.
Not rah-rah. I just think it's a concept that could be done better, and I think there's other approaches that actually are inclusive of women, believe it or not, and a broader social spectrum. But it was a good experience, and as I said, took away a few good friends from it.
Well, that's interesting, and I like that you've kind of spent time thinking about, too, how this could be changed or improved. And it seems to be something you like to do, is problem solve, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. What about law school? Did you go to law school right after college?
No. Actually, I finished college in 3 years, partly because I had enough credits and partly just because I was working and hustling and bucks were tough. And I was still in touch with people in the community, and I got a job teaching. I had to go to Kutztown after graduating from Penn to get 6 credits so I could get in the classroom. But I taught 6th and 7th grade math and social studies at St. Thomas More School, and
Did you really?
And coached the junior high baseball team. They had a maternity leave situation, and I filled in and was asked to stay. I had a great year. Met my wife, Lori, who was between her sophomore and junior years at Muhlenberg then. And it was a great experience preparing lesson plans and keeping kids engaged, and sometimes going outside the lesson plan so the kids could learn something from a guy who I just graduated at 21. And
there you are teaching kids like 12, 13.
It was a wonderful experience. I still hear from one or two of them periodically, or will bump into students. But I then went on to Temple Law School and had a wonderful experience there.
When you're teaching, though, what is going through your mind as you're teaching that made you kind of think law school was the path for you?
I thought it was the path before, and frankly, being 21 and looking out 3 years, the world didn't need a 24-year-old lawyer, and I needed some money. And if it isn't obvious, I like to converse. And I thought, opportunity to do math and social studies at that level would be a lot of fun. And, it probably helped me be a better friend and a better parent, just having dealt with the kids. But it was, on the one hand, I took the job seriously. On the other hand, it was a lark. It was 9.5 months. And I decided I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life, and I would like to have a few bucks in my pocket, among other things. So I grabbed the opportunity and went to law school.
That's great. I bet it gives you a good appreciation, though, for those teachers along the way, right?
No question.
Oof,
I'm
hard work.
always glad when I bump into one of my kids' friends or a kid from the neighborhood or one of my employees' kids, and they say they're going to go into education with the goal of being a teacher, because I don't think teachers get enough respect in our country, and
it's hard work.
It's really hard work.
That matters.
And
that matters.
It matters,
on top of it, yeah.
and a lot of kids, especially where there's not a strong supportive family unit, rely on teachers more than they may even know. It's a great vocation.
Absolutely. Well, it's fascinating that you did that. So you go to Temple. You're back in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
You start to study law.
Mm-hmm.
When do you hone in on what you want to do? And how does that really work in law school? I would imagine, I'm guessing the first year is sort of all the same.
First year is set courses, all the basics, contracts, constitutional law, property, procedure, that sort of thing. And you have a little more leeway. Second year, third year, there's lots of leeway. And you get a feel for what you like. I thought for a while I might want to be a prosecutor. And I got a part-time job my third year with a Philadelphia district attorney, where I was allowed to go into court with repeat offenders, and a lot of these people were people that stole hubcaps, and small amounts of marijuana were being sold, and they weren't really smart. And what I learned was that my heart, in this case, was bigger than my prosecutorial leanings, and I felt bad for these people, but I realized I didn't want to do that for a career. So I started looking outside and thought I'd want to go into business law or trial law, and I was really litigating cases, trying cases my first couple of years, and I always enjoyed property law and property rights. And my dad, late in his career, with a large oil company where he'd been a salesman in the day when there were gas stations owned by oil companies, got a promotion, and he used to talk about land regulations and zoning, and undoubtedly that impacted me a little bit, but after you try a lot of cases and you go through the procedure, you kind of assess or reassess where you are, and I ended up doing a lot of development work as the Lehigh Valley really sprung to life, because when I grew up here, it was very much Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton were like Saturn and Venus and
totally
Mercury.
Separate
they were separate, and who could believe? But I went on a long rant there about law school. But I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, probably watched too many movies and TV shows, because it's a hard living if you're any good. And you really got to be disciplined and know where you want to go. And great thing about it is that it accommodates a lot of styles, personal and problem solving.
As you are going through those first few years practicing law, at what point do you get married and have your kids? Where did that kind of fall in the timeline? Because you talked about meeting Lori. She was at Muhlenberg while you were teaching?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And her family, she moved there back in this area from California. And she still had family, sisters in California. And she actually went back for a year, lived with a sister, was a practicing CPA. And we tried to keep it together long distance. And after almost a year, she came back and became a practicing CPA. We got married a little over a year after I graduated from law school. So that was an ongoing, and you know, I got to say it, best move I made.
It's true. She's pretty great.
I mean it. So. You know,
now are you guys both living in Philly at the time?
No. We were living in Allentown.
Okay.
I made an assessment. I had some opportunities in Philadelphia and just had a good feeling about what was to become the Lehigh Valley. When in the 80s, early 80s, you say Lehigh Valley and people think ice cream and milk. They think of the dairy. And it's really been one of the masterful regional development marketing jobs that I know of, creating this metro area that we live in now called the Lehigh Valley. It's
fascinating to have that thought that early on, really, because steel is still happening, right? Bethlehem Steel.
Yeah, but it was fading.
On its
Mack Trucks was looking down to the Carolinas.
Yeah.
And I had a professor in law school who's still alive. He's a senior appellate judge who we developed a friendship, actually painted a couple of his bedrooms while I was in law school. But he was a Philadelphian and asked me what I wanted to do afterwards. And I said, I think I want private practice. And he said, this was during, I guess, Reagan's presidency, and it was a tough economy. And he said, why are you staying in Philadelphia? He said, do you know people up in Allentown and Bethlehem? I said, yeah. And he said, that area is going to come. And he didn't exactly say this, but you put the pieces together. And even before I-78, which opened up over a quarter century ago, our community's wedged between the financial capital, first biggest city in the country, and what was then the fourth biggest city in the country and a major business center, and the suburbs were merging, and it was almost like, how can the area not miss? Yeah. How can it not miss? You know, and I thought it might be good to come back, always entrepreneurial, and here I am all these years later.
Well, with that, we're going to take another commercial break, because when we get back, Joe, I want to talk a little bit about your kids and your practice now and your vision for the Lehigh Valley in the next quarter century.
Great.
All right. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. Stick with us. Any time of year, the Lehigh Valley is an exceptional place for food, drink, and entertainment. Whether you're cooling off from the summer heat at Dutch Springs or shopping for just the right kind of gift at Chris Kindle Market, you will make memories all year round. For more information on what the Lehigh Valley has to offer, check out Discover Lehigh Valley's website at discoverlehighvalley.com. All right, if you're just tuning in, I am here with my good friend, Joe Fitzpatrick. He is the founder of Fitzpatrick Lentz Bubba Law Firm, but he has had a very eclectic life and career, and the number of jobs, Joe, alone has been fascinating. You talked a little bit about your wife, Lori, in our last segment, and you guys getting married, moving in the Lehigh Valley. She's a CPA, but you have some kids. So tell me a little bit about your family and your children and what they're all about.
That's the best part of it all. Lori was a practicing CPA. I was working for a law firm that's morphed several times, and at age 28 had this great idea. I want to go on my own. We can we can build a better animal. And Lori worked part-time for me, mostly at nights, as I built the practice and hired some people and tried to convince several of my current partners to come with me. And we were married at the time. Eventually, she left the CPA firm to work for me. And I can't be any more candid than to say we had some medical issues with the family. We both wanted kids, and through some modern scientific advances after 11 and a half years of marriage. We were really blessed, and I say it's my own miracle, with boy-girl twins who are now 26 years old,
Yeah.
Claire and Dan. And that just the most rewarding, I don't even want to say magical, just special thing that's occurred in my life.
Yeah. And especially, I think, when you go through a lot to get there.
Yeah.
And while Joe and I did not have that experience, we have had it in our family. And you know, it's a tough journey. It's a tough journey.
Some people walk into a room and there's a baby 9 months later.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. But you know what? It's something that you really wished for, and then you got two amazing kids in one shot. And I've got a brother and sister-in-law who are twins, and it's pretty cool. My mother-in-law always says it's kind of fun because they always had each other.
Absolutely
Always
true.
had a playmate. So tell me a little bit about what Dan and Claire are like. They've got interesting lives themselves. 26, they're you're watching them become adults.
They have very interesting lives, and they are today great friends, which is just one of the most gratifying things I can say. They are different, but in so many ways, they are, besides being friends, they are equals. They're both smart, and in some ways, many ways, I say they're smarter than I am. They've been great students. They were both good quality athletes in high school, better than me, and so different. Dan is tall and lean. He can run all day, and was 4 years, made states in cross country, a couple times in track, played tennis. Claire was a volleyball player on 2 state championship teams and one runner-up state team in a real competitive program. But they were great students, and like their mom and myself, were readers, and took their study seriously. But they had a lot of fun, and they had a lot of fun together. And I see it more so than when I was growing up, in terms of going out with a girl or having your own group of guys. They had big circles of friends, guys and girls, and I think that was great. And to an extent, without saying that they looked out for each other, but they were competitive. There was and still is a lot of trash talk, but there's a lot of yeah. I mean, they can be brutal, but there's a lot of love behind it.
I love it. If you were to give advice to someone at my stage of parenting who's got a sophomore and a junior in high school, what would your advice be? You're 10 years ahead of me with the kids.
This is a very temporary point in your life, and just be open to other people. Don't be judgmental. It's not always important to be cool. 9 times out of 10, the nerds end up ruling. And read a lot.
Okay. Good advice. I love it. All right. Well, tell me a little bit about Fitzpatrick Lentz Bubba. You talked about starting that law firm at 28 years old and having a vision. And where did it go? What were those early years like?
Yeah, actually, I at 28 went on my own. Went in with a great old Jewish lawyer named Howard Yaris. Took me in because he had extra space, and little did I know he had terminal cancer. And I helped him out in his waning couple of years, and then went and bought a building that was falling in on itself on Walnut Street. Hired a couple of lawyers part-time, a couple of secretaries, and was building a business like a block at a time, and doing a little bit of everything, trying some cases, doing some zoning, representing some banks, out working the community so that, as you can appreciate, people know who you are.
Who you are, yeah, that's the name of the game.
And there was also, I mean, part of it was just good fortune that the area was becoming less parochial. It was as if the Philly suburbs discovered we were here in some respects. There were some people in the business community that sort of figured Lehigh Valley didn't need an inferiority complex because it wasn't New York or Philadelphia. That was one of the great things. And opportunities started to emerge with the hospitals, with universities and colleges becoming bigger presences, with R&D and I-78 opening up a conduit into Jersey and New York City. A lot of good fortuitous things happened, and I worked with Joe Bubba and Ed Lentz, who are the other name partners, at my first firm where I only was less than 3 years. And we remained friends. And once in a while, over cocktails, I kept telling them there was opportunity, and they were open-minded, bought in. And I had a guy who's still with me 33 plus years later, Tim Charlesworth, who's one of our senior partners. And we tried to develop a vision. We had different disciplines, and we wanted to put family first, and yet take advantage of this swell of activity and sort of newfound sophistication that was emerging through the 80s. So I was on my own for about 5 years with a couple lawyers working for me. We really came together as a firm in '88, and we were young. I think I was 31 or something. But,
it's incredible.
Yeah, no, like 32 or 3.
If you could give people, I guess, a picture and advice of what those early years were like. You talked about getting your name out there in the community, taking what work you could, being varied so that you could, pay the bills, I would imagine. What is the advice to somebody who's looking to start a business or advance their career? What do you look back and say, that served me really well?
Listening to people tell you what they needed and wanted instead of telling them what they needed and wanted. Working really hard. Maintaining your sense of self and respecting who you are while working with others, giving other people some room. I mean, it's there's so many cliches about partnerships and jobs and companies. You have one being like a marriage, but a lot of times cliches like stereotypes are true, and you have to be committed to it and work really hard and give people the benefit of the doubt, and retain the right to question their judgment, but don't always be quick to question their motives, and just kind of go with the flow, and keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening not only in the community but in the world, and saying, are we current? Are we real? Are we becoming an attraction in business for people that need services? Are we becoming a culture in a workplace where people want to come and stay and excel? I mean, those are the big themes that I'd like to chase down all these years.
I love it. And you've been around now over 30 years as a firm. What are you most proud of?
At this stage, I mean, I could point to all kinds of projects. The Stabler Center, I was blessed at 29 when Don Stabler hired me. And Wegmans coming into Lehigh Valley, and Trader Joe's, which won't build a store here yet, but has all their distribution and processing here. And the FedEx airport project with Rock. I mean, lots of great projects. I've been lucky, and a lot of it was right place, right time. But to answer your question, I'm most proud of the people and organization we have. We have just really quality people that I'm not patting myself on the back because I'm proud to be with them and of them. And a lot of our hires, both at the staff level and at the attorney professional level, have come to us because others who have worked for us called their friends and said, we want you in here.
This is a place you want to be, which is cool, right?
And I've been the direct and indirect beneficiary of that. Some of our best lawyers were directed to me and to my other partners by other junior lawyers, younger lawyers, who told their friends, you want to be here. And it really helps. It really helps.
I want to ask you one more question, then we're going to go to a rapid fire round, and that is that you have made your life's work the Lehigh Valley and improving this community. And I have to say, as someone who's been here for 15 years now and watched incredible change, and hopefully been a little bit a part of that story too.
Absolutely.
I have such admiration for what you've done, and I want to know what your vision is. What's next? I mean, what does the Lehigh Valley look like in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years?
Well, I'm in the process. I hardly have an exit strategy that's personal. I like to work. I want to work, and I intend to do so. But I also am with my senior partners trying to transition to the next generation. And I again, listening to them, I think it's inevitable that the Lehigh Valley will become more urban with time, and that brings benefits and it brings detriments. But I know there's a lot of blowback because of traffic and trucks. But the fact is, with I-78 as the main thoroughfare, we're located within a 5-hour drive from almost 40% of the U.S. population. And we're wedged still. It's a good thing between New York and Philadelphia because those are resources to us. They're not impediments. We go to shows and sporting events and dinner and can come back in the same day. And I think to that extent, we lose a little bit of the old Lehigh Valley, the old, the Pennsylvania Dutch culture and the steel working and truck manufacturing culture that built the place and was a great thing. But I think we'll continue to rise in terms of being an R&D and healthcare and educational center, but also a desirable place to live for people who will commute outside of the area. And I just think it's going to be a great place to live. But I don't think we can live a fantasy that it's going to be some kind of a rural utopia. And again, I'm not being critical, but some folks, I think, outside of the cities think that can still be the case, and the swell of development is real and true, and the important thing is to control the quality of it.
Yeah, to keep the balance. I think that's one of the things I hear a lot in the conversation around the growth and development of the Lehigh Valley is how do we keep that balance? And so far, so good. I think it's a pretty amazing place to live, work, and play, as they say. So, all right, Joe, well, you have not heard these questions. I'd like the audience to know that, so I'm going to rapid fire. So these are authentic and real. Your best holiday memory?
Boy, that's tough. Probably first Christmas with kids. And it was, on the one hand, it was hellish, but we had two-month-old babies in a house, and we were always big Christmas people, but couldn't have had a better gift and just starting that adventure.
Yeah, those Christmas mornings are so magical when they're little.
Ours were diapers.
But it was the greatest. You look at it totally differently, I think. All right. Your favorite Halloween costume?
Let's see. I don't. My favorite Halloween costume was one that I, along with a lot of friends, got in trouble for. But it was not a costume. It was our high school football practice uniforms. And we used to have to go from Central, downtown Allentown, to Jordan Park, which was a field 5-6 blocks away. And we decided it would be a great idea to knock door to door with our helmets out saying, "Trick or treat, what are you? We're football players." And we caught hell at school. And we had to...
So you wore your actual football uniform?
We were walking home from practice and knocked on doors. And people, some gave us candy, some told us to beat it. And when the coach and principal found out, we had to donate all our candy, and I think we got some detention, but it was pretty funny.
That's pretty good, though. That's still pretty good. All right, if you could have any superpower, what would your superpower be?
Oh, God. To maybe have a modern-day, technically developed Tower of Babel where people can all talk to each other in the world.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, because there's too many people talking past each other, too much tribalism in the world and in our country, and nobody's listening, and everybody's talking. And it would be good if they could hear each other.
That's excellent. All right, if you are a TV watcher or show watcher, is there a show in particular that you are drawn to, that you binge watch, or that you watch on repeat all the time? What is your go-to?
Yeah, well, To my wife's chagrin, I am a cable news junkie, but I don't think that counts. I love Shameless, and I think the cast is great. It's outrageous. It's a big, dysfunctional, dishonest family, which is a lot of fun, and I laugh out loud, and I have rewatched some episodes. I'm just getting started with a show that's been around a long time, The Americans, about some spies, which I think is a great show. And yeah, right now, that's what I'm into. I'm waiting for the next season.
Do you like historical documerations or anything like that? You're into history?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny. The apple doesn't always fall far from the tree, because my son was, up until this last year, was doing production and writing for biography series for A&E History Channel. But they scrapped that whole franchise because everybody wants to be Netflix, so he's moved on.
All right. Well, you're right. I guess the history love goes through the family. Okay. If there is one place that you could go that you've never been, what's your bucket list destination?
Probably Australia and New Zealand. Yeah, I've done a lot of Europe.
That's on our list too. We've never done that either.
Love Europe.
Maybe hoping like I'll have a kid study abroad there, so we'd have an excuse to go. I'm planting the seeds.
We had Buenos Aires and Cambridge. So
all right, well, it's still two good places.
That wasn't bad.
I'll make sure I give Lori the hint next time. All right, if you were on a desert island, what would you bring with you?
My iPad, assuming
you could charge
I could charge it and there's
with a solar powered charger.
Absolutely.
I love it. All right, and now we get to turn the table. Would you like to ask me one question?
Yeah. How do you select the people that you ask to be on this very diverse podcast you run?
We sit down and talk about influencers in the community, and then we look at a variety of things like men and women, ethnicity, age, field that they're in. And my belief is that everybody has a story. Everybody has a story. Like, I never knew about you doing the lead in the high school musical.
Nor should you.
Well, now I do, though. And I have to say, this podcast was actually created by my staff of millennials who thought that it would be really cool to hear how people from different backgrounds became who they are and the lessons they learned along the way. So it's just been a journey. I'm really lucky to know a lot of cool people in the Valley. So every podcast is interesting.
Great.
So, well, thank you, Joe Fitzpatrick, for being here with us today on Unscripted with Russo. It's been awesome, fascinating, interesting, and hope everybody enjoyed listening. Thanks,
Good.
everyone.
Thanks a lot, Ashley.